All right, my name is James Shepard, and I would like to welcome you to Merchant Sales Stimulus. Really, there's two reasons that I wanted to put this live event together. Number one is that with the new stimulus, the CARES Act that just came out, in researching that for my own company, I very quickly realized that this particular piece of legislation had the potential to really impact both individual agents, whether it's W-2, 1099, as well as in a very big way, ISOs of really any size, but especially the smaller ISOs with less than 500 employees. I've asked several people to join me today, a couple of attorneys, as well as Patty Murphy, to really just break down this piece of legislation to make sure you understand how you can benefit from it. Because I realize that a lot of people in the industry right now are having to make very difficult decisions financially, whether it's individual agents that have had a significant reduction in residual income, upfront bonus money, or whether it's ISOs who are looking at potentially laying off employees and difficult decisions like that. I think this is a piece of legislation that you definitely want to make sure you fully understand. And so we want to cover that. And then towards the very end of the webinar, probably just the last 30 minutes or so, I'm going to cover a phone sales success framework that I put together, because the other thing I really believe is that a lot of ISOs and agents are, 100% on the defense right now. And I think that's really a mistake. You've got to move forward and make progress. And for many of you, what that means is that the phone is going to have to become your friend. Maybe you've been selling face to face. Maybe you have a team of agents that have been going face to face. And so if you hang on, if you're involved on the sales side of things, if you hang on until the end, I'm going to just kind of do an overview, and then I'm going to give you instructions on how you can get the new ebook that I just put together. It's like a 50-page ebook on how to sell over the phone merchant services, and then also a special program that I'm running over the next few weeks that you're going to be able to get at no cost to learn how to sell over the phone. So just a couple things I really wanted to do to help the industry during this time. With all the connections I have with ISOs and agents, I thought it'd be a good idea for us to get together and talk about this. Let me just give you a couple things by way of introduction real quick, and then we'll dive into our first guest here. The coronavirus obviously has been, just a crazy thing, a crazy time for our country. Most concerning, of course, is the health side of it, and saying prayers for those that are having family that are ill or suffering from the virus. But as far as our industry goes, it's also been just a catastrophic event for our industry. There was an interesting comment this morning in our Facebook group where an agent said, and here I thought our industry was recession proof. And this idea that, we thought this is, our industry was just protected no matter what, but we didn't think about something happening that would literally shut down 25 to 40% of our merchant accounts for a period of months. And so it's really been something that I think has kind of shocked the industry. And it's the kind of thing where if you really want to come out of it stronger than ever, there's going to be some things that you're going to want to do. Three keys that I want to really cover today. The first thing is, of course, safety and health. And so before we get into any conversations about how you can continue moving forward and be successful and all of that, before we get into any of that, obviously this is all predicated on your safety and your health being the first concern, being aware of federal recommendations, as well as state laws and state recommendations and proclamations and all the different things that are going on right now. You need to be aware of your market, you need to be aware of your situation, and putting the health and safety of yourself and your family first really goes without saying, but I wanted to mention it here because we're on this, this webinar, we're going to assume that you're healthy. We're going to assume that everybody in your family is currently healthy and that you're able to move forward. And assuming that, then we go into the next two keys, which are going to be financial survival. So once the health and safety is there, well, then we got to make sure that we are able to survive financially. And, that's really going to be predicated on this CARES Act. And making sure that if you don't have, a really solid recurring income stream built up yet, you may need to get a little bit of help along the way. And the good news is there should be plenty of help. I really believe that over the next about hour, every single person on this event is going to understand how you can bring in at least 5,000 or more in revenue over the next few weeks from the CARES Act. And so no matter if you're an individual agent or if you're an ISO and you need to bring in $250,000 to cover payroll over the next 8 weeks, these are things that are all available through the CARES Act if you understand it and you implement things correctly. And so I think the first thing has to be surviving financially, because I've been there. I've been broke before. I know exactly what it feels like. When I got into the industry 10 years ago, I didn't have 2 pennies to rub together, and so I get it. And I know that it's very difficult to focus on moving forward and selling when you're trying to figure out how you're going to make your next mortgage payment, something along these lines. And so, it's very, very important dealing with this financial survival side of things. Let me pull this up here. Okay. And then number 3 is phone and social media. So the final thing here, let me get this done here. Oh, there we go. We got Patty on here. Patty, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear you great. I'm going to mute your line here. So good. We're just making sure we got our panelists on here. Awesome. So the final and third one is, once you have, established some kind of, the ability to survive financially, and then, you've got that health and safety and all of that. Well, then it's like, okay, now what do we do? Do we really just sit at home for 8 weeks and do nothing? Do we really sit back and let all of our competitors get an edge? Do we sit back and do nothing? No, I don't believe that. I believe we go on the offense. Now, offense is going to look very different over the next 8 weeks than it normally does, right? We're going to have to focus on the phone, and we're going to have to focus on social media. Fortunately, these are 2 areas where I have a lot of experience with consulting and helping ISOs. So my goal at the end of this event here is to work with you on that. So real quick, let me give you the agenda, and then I'm going to introduce our first guest. So the agenda is pretty simple. We're going to start out with what I call ISO stimulus. And so James Huber has joined us, and he is going to be talking with us about what ISOs can do to benefit from the CARES Act and how they can get funding financially from this government legislation that was put in place and the various SBA programs. Then we're going to switch over to Chris Dryden, which is Chris and James are attorneys, they're partners, and he's going to be talking about the agent side of it. So he's going to be explaining to us how the agents can benefit from the unemployment compensation that's now available for even 1099 contractors, and talking about the stimulus check and other things that are going to benefit the individuals. Once that's done, then I'm going to transition, and Patty Murphy and I are going to discuss the impact to the small business owners, your clients, and what you can do to present this information effectively to them so that you can really add maximum value. Some of you, before this all happened, in a good year, you would have added maybe a few $100s that year in value to each of your clients through the savings and the other value that you provide. If you handle this right, and if you're the expert that goes to them and points them in the right direction, you may add $50,000 in value to their business. And that's not an exaggeration at all. A regular small business could have an enormous tens of thousands of dollars of benefit from the information that we are about to cover. So without further ado here, let me get James Huber unmuted here, and then I'm going to kind of introduce him a little bit. So let's see here. There we go. Awesome. Hey, James, how you doing?
Hey, good.
Good. So I'm trying to think how long ago we talked, James. We've known each other a little over a year, I think now, right? Something like that.
Yeah, I think about that. And I did a podcast with you about a year ago.
Yep, absolutely. And so one of our most popular podcast episodes, James has just an unbelievable reputation in the industry working with ISOs and agents. And we're actually going to talk in a little bit more in detail about some things that he can do for you guys to help you out. But what I'd love to do to start this off, James, is, there's been a lot of confusion as I talk to the sales reps about who exactly is qualified to get some of these benefits. We have the, paycheck protection program and the, the advance that can be, and the unemployment, all this stuff. Can you give us a little bit of context around what is an ISO, what is a business, who can really benefit from the CARES Act?
Absolutely. Before I get into that, I do have to give my disclaimer. I am an attorney, and this is disclaimers. What we do is a lot of this is still developing. The legislation is pretty straightforward. The application, if anybody's done it yet, is very straightforward, but some of the legislation contradicts what's in the application. So what I'm going to be talking about today, a lot of this is being interpreted, not just by me though, so this isn't just my opinion here. We are working with industry attorneys plugged in at the top to understand exactly what is going on. So my recommendation is, if you're going out and you're reading something, double check it, triple check it, really talk to your accountant or an attorney who's reading this stuff, because it is dynamic. It's a moving target. For example, the interest rate changed this morning. It's now back to 1%. So this is all over the place. But so that's my disclaimer. For who qualifies, this is a pretty easy one. Everyone should apply for these. If you're not applying for this, you're literally missing out. And in my opinion, you're going to be the victim of the fallout from this influx of cash. I don't know where this money is coming from. It looks like it's just being printed. So there's going to be a fallback from this. So go ahead and go try and get some of this money and relatively fast. I mean, I was on a similar podcast the other day, and their opinion was all this money was going to run out. And I don't want to cause panic by that, because none of this money has been distributed yet. So there is time, and you definitely want to make sure you do it right. There, I'll talk about some of the issues that could come up. But
sure,
and it is answer your question, yes,
programs, right?
It is a first come first serve program, but there is a round 4 coming out, which I don't think that they realize what they did here. I can talk about some of the issues, but you know, the way that they've worded this, the loopholes, some people are going to be able to exhaust massive amounts of money over and over again. So everybody qualifies for this. The only real limitation is if you have more than 500 employees, and this is open to interpretation too. You're supposed to include your temps, you're supposed to include, you know, everybody, you know, and the definition of an employee is wide open too. So, you know, it could be, oh, this is an independent contractor, they're actually an employee, you shouldn't include them. So, but for now, you include W-2 employees, and that's your cap, and it doesn't include your agents. So what the problem is there is, let's take a large ISO that has mostly agents. How this is calculated is based on your payroll. So the large ISOs here, which shouldn't be a surprise to anybody in our industry, are going to be able to capture a huge amount of this money and really take a windfall through loopholes. Not loopholes here, just that this was rushed out. So
just to clarify one thing, the rationale for, you know, why you can't include your contractors and the money you're paying them is because your contractors can actually apply for these programs themselves, right?
Yes, and as I said, they should. Now the cap is, let's say you're a contractor, it's $100,000. If you're making more than that, and I sure hope you are, is that you, it's not that you don't qualify, you just back it down. So same thing for your employees, and that is our interpretation of this, but that seems to be accurate. Otherwise, a lot of people, you know, I live in California, a lot of people are not going to be covered here, but so you just back out of it. And I can go into all the businesses and list through it, but the short answer is everybody.
Let's say everybody, meaning a 1099 contractor or a business of just about any type. Obviously, a W-2 employee is not going to benefit from these particular programs.
No, but my advice even to a W-2 employee is that you could say that you're a sole proprietor and doing business on the side, and go ahead and apply.
That's a good idea, actually. Yeah.
And, you know, there's no, like I said, there is, I think we're going to get into timing later, but, you know, if you're talking to your customers, your merchants, the bummer for the food services industry and entertainment services is they're on a delayed timeline. So the nice thing is, I think this gives you time, if you're an agent or, you know, an ISO or something like that, take care of yourself first, make sure you get this done right correctly. And then you go take this out to your customers and making sure they're getting it done correctly. Like James said, this is a humongous value add to your customers, and they might need it so that they can keep processing transactions. The other thing I do have to say I'm saying, you know, go out and get them, apply, but be careful. You do have to certify certain conditions, that there's an uncertainty of the economic conditions that makes the loan request necessary.
Sure.
What we're advising everybody is create a contemporaneous record. A lot of you guys don't need this right now. Last month was an okay month. You just got paid, excuse me,
Right.
the month before was okay. Next month, this is going to hit you when
Right.
you got a half month, and then the month following, this is going to hit you. So create a contemporaneous record right now, something, an email, your board minutes. You know, my partner and I have done this without disclosing too much about our business, is, you know, based on our ISO clients having a decreased revenue, this, that, and the other thing, this concludes our meeting. So create a record that you actually need this. The reason is they say in there that there's going to be penalties for lying on this, and the penalties, they haven't said what they are, but the problem is you're committing bank fraud, and we are currently in a disaster state, and so that multiplies the prison sentence that you would get to 30 years and $1 million fine. So I would be really careful how you fill out these applications, and I would absolutely consult with somebody, because the application is dangerously easy to fill out. And if you don't need it, you don't have a record that you need it, you could run into some trouble later.
Sure.
And how you spend the money too would be, you know, your next issue, but I think we get into that.
Yeah, well, we're gonna that. Well, and I think so. So what I hear you saying, James, just kind of summarize all that is, you know, everybody other than W-2 employees would qualify. Even a W-2 employee might say they have a side gig that's suffered as a result of this, but you definitely want to have a record of everything as you go through, because this is not your normal loan application, which I can vouch for. We applied for both of these things, you know, already, and I did the one today for the Paycheck Protection Program, and yeah, I mean it's so simple that it's a little bit deceiving, and you do want to make sure you have some additional records, is what I hear you saying, of, hey, this is why we need this money, this is what we're projecting is going to happen to our business, this is why we've applied for it. You just want to have some record of the rationale behind it. Is that kind of what you're saying, James?
Yeah, absolutely. You want to have a legitimate record, and everybody in this industry has a legitimate reason. But
Absolutely.
If anybody's ever been audited or had an issue in this industry, nobody outside of probably the people on this call understands this industry. So you need to have these records. You know, if you just go in, of course, you know, we're going to have a dip because my customers are processing transactions. Auditor regulators' head might start spinning. So do create that record, but it's, you know, it's something simple and verified, because it is true in this industry. Like you said in the beginning, I was getting a nice laugh out of, you know, we all thought that we are recession proof, but you know, here we go.
Sure. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into some specifics here. So let's talk about the first one, the EIDL Advance, the up to $10,000 advance. Can you give us a little bit of info on that? You know, who should you know go for this thing? What is it? How does it work?
This is the economic injury disaster loan. This is something they roll out for hurricanes and things of the like. This is supposed to be an advance on the loan that you're subsequently going to get, and it's $10,000. And they say it's going to be distributed within 3 days. But if anybody has ever dealt with the SBA before, which I have extensively, I'm not holding my breath.
Well, we applied 4 days ago and have heard nothing. So yeah.
Well, you applied, but you didn't actually apply. You went into the queue.
The third was the first day.
Yeah, today is the first day. My partner Chris has some great jokes about why these aren't going to go through, because the department was dismantled, and putting it back together when nobody is allowed to come into the office could be rather tricky. And these are notoriously things that aren't thought through in the legislation. They literally said, put this on paper, and they weren't talking. You know, a lot of this says the SBA has 15 days to put this together, and I'll talk about the forgiveness and stuff later, but you know, go ahead and get in the queue now, and hopefully you're dealt with in time. But your problem, if you have something wrong or questionable, I think you probably go back to the back of the line, because they are going to be going back and forth. forth and checking your loan. So this disaster relief, to get into the specifics, you can get an advance on your loan of up to $10,000. There is no requirement to repay the advance, even if you're denied the loan. This is literally the one that we're all calling free money, but obviously it's going to have a humongous cost down the line. You can use this money. This is where you don't want to end up in trouble. You know, if you get this money in, use it for sick leave, payroll, increase costs for materials. I don't know if anybody's having trouble, you know, ordering equipment and you're having to buy it from another ISO is a huge thing. Like, let's take one of the only businesses open right now is cannabis. They're all going to curbside. How are you guys getting your equipment right now? You're probably going to some of the clients that we know that have been stockpiling this stuff to help these people get their equipment to start doing it curbside, and it's costing a whole bunch more. That would be a great use of this money. Your rent, your mortgage payments, which is nice. Most people, there's a forbearance program for most of your mortgage payments, but why not go ahead and use it? You'll have to pay it eventually. Repay obligations unmet due to revenue loss. Love that definition. You got a nice, you know, wide target to shoot for. This advance amount, it will be reduced from the loan forgiveness amount if you transfer this into another loan. So, but then that will be forgiven too. So, I mean, that's a little bit tricky. And here they're saying, you know, we'll have regulations in 15 days. That was a few days ago. So, you know, we'll see what comes down with forgiveness. I can talk about that later. But this is a great one. Everyone apply for this. You apply direct with the SBA on this application. And be careful. The fraud sites are popping up left and right. The FTC is all over it, tackling people who are trying to charge fees and this, that, the other thing. And I think that's a great thing actually right now to say, if you're an agent and you think you're going to go sell these things like a cash advance, you are not. There is a big caveat, do not do this. There are opportunities that you can go through a institution where you can now, the regulation again changed today, which I think you can make 1 point on these for referring these. So there are opportunities out there. And of course, you know, I can share a link for that later. But don't go thinking that you're going to go charge somebody an application fee. And I say that because I had a similar thought. So,
sure. So, okay. So summarizing this one and move on to the next, we have, there's a $10,000 advance. I can, again, from personal experience, tell you that the application going through the SBA's website is like the easiest thing you've ever done. One thing, you know, that's a little tricky is the only two things they asked, James, was total revenue for your business, I think from the last 12 months or something. And then they said total cost of goods sold instead of saying total expenses. I don't know, did you see that part? That was a little confusing to me. Like for somebody who has a small ISO, what do they put there for in that spot? So all they asked for is total revenue last 12 months and then total cost of goods sold. I know you're not an accountant, but did you see that?
Yeah, my interpretation is that's your, you know, the two big numbers on your P&L. And that's what I'm hearing, you know, it's not my interpretation is not your payroll. And this one is where it's not straightforward. And I can't give a straight answer, but I think you're safe if you're going on the two big numbers on your P&L.
Got it. Okay. So once you put that through, then it officially got filed supposedly today. And then the money is supposed to be out within potentially 3 business days, and we'll all be anxiously awaiting to see when that happens in 2 weeks. Is that basically it?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be nice to see it, but it's, you know, it's potentially, there's a bunch of people, you know, working the system. Because all you need to put in there is your routing number. What if I go through and I apply for 400 people and I drain all the money out through a hack?
Right. Sure. So that's the 10,000 that you can apply for. That's an advance. It does not have to be paid back. So now let's get into the more complex program here, the payroll protection program. Can you kind of describe that and give us an overview initially of like, what does this include? And then we can break it down a little bit.
Yeah, this is what you're kind of applying for the same thing here with these. This one you're going to apply through your bank. And I say through your bank. If you're going to go to somewhere else, you're never going to get this done. The issue that banks are having is if you're not established with them, they've got to go through their KYC procedures, and it's not going to happen. So you have to go through your bank. If not your bank, maybe find a little credit union if your bank is not offering this, but your bank is offering this. So go ahead and check with your bank, and if not, go to a credit union, or then you're going through maybe one of those lenders that you can use it on your merchants to try and make a point or two, which is probably fine. Maybe you can make a point or two on your loan. So these are used for, again, payroll costs, salary, wages, commissions, tips, up to $100,000 for each employee. Again, you just adjust that down if it's over that. Again, that's just our opinion. Independent contractors are included in your payroll costs, and that's what I said before. There's a discrepancy in that area. So some people think you just add the employee and then you add the independent contractor also, but I would go either or. This would be a judgment call that you would have to look at, the overall expenses of your payroll and everything else. So you can receive the lesser of 10 million or 2.5 times the average total monthly payroll cost for the prior year. And so this is where you're going to get into, I want to get as close as I can to $10 million, and payroll is a dynamic number that you can move around, because what is actually payroll? There's a whole bunch of costs that go into that, particularly in places where the definition of an employee is up in the air. I would, you can include all sorts of things. So some of this, the forgiveness, and this is all developing right now, but I can tell you what we know right now. Some of this is a grant. We're looking at some of this as a grant, which is amazing. I will say again, these, we'll never see a loan product like this on the market ever again. Go get one. This is a confusing section too. So here's the general philosophy is 8 weeks following when you get this, you use it for your rent, your utilities, interest on mortgage that was incurred before February means it's eligible. We're talking to, merchants that have a cash advance, for example. They could use some of this and pay off their interest on their cash advance. So if you're talking to your cash advance clients, I would talk to them and say, hey, why don't you do a program where they can just hit the interest right now and not just default on this right away. Use it for that. If you spend this money well, you might not have to pay anything. This is breaking as of yesterday. The Treasury and the SBA came out and said 75% of the amount forgiven must be used to cover payroll.
Yep.
And then there's going to be a true up period, and they're going to hold you accountable. I don't know how this is going to happen, how they're going to audit that many people, but I wouldn't want to be the example.
Right. Well, you know what? One thing I'll cut in. Well, two things that I think are interesting. So I just read this morning the final rule, or they call it the final rule. I don't know why they call it that. They'll change it again. But the rule that they sent to the banks, and I was actually reading the part for the lender. Well, the part for the lender, I mean, it really is interesting. It makes it sound like, as a bank, the bank is kind of responsible. Like, you're just going to get this documentation from people. If it looks good, forgive the debt. We'll clean it up later. And so it's good and bad. It's good because, the idea is you're probably going to get approved if you, again, like I know my bank manager personally, and I'm, they're helping me get the documentation. It's almost like right now, it seems like the way it's worded is it's up to your bank to look at the documentation, which again, the requirements are very, very minimal. they would then submit and say, okay, this is a good loan. And then it's also, as of right now, it looks like it's going to be up to them as far as getting the documentation from you of here's how much the first 8 weeks I spent on payroll, rent, utilities, etc., to then process the loan forgiveness. One other interesting thing that we did that I thought I would share on here, just some people might find it interesting. So when I went down to the bank today to drop off the application, I went ahead and opened a new bank account for our business. All proceeds from the advance and from the payroll protection program are actually going to a different bank account. And we are setting up our payroll provider to draw money from that account. We're paying our rent from that account, and we're paying some of our utilities from that account for the next 8 weeks, because you do not want to be the one in 18 months when they finally get around to looking at this to say, oh, you ripped the system off, you took this money. So to me, I even want to separate it to the point of like, no, like this is a totally separate bank account. If we get to the end of the 8 weeks and we still have $7,000 left in there or whatever, because we didn't spend it on things that we are 100% for sure are qualified under this loan forgiveness, at that point, then and only then we will move that over to our operating account, close the other account and say, this 8,000 is actually a loan we have to pay back. So I would definitely advise, because of, as you mentioned, the ambiguity around the rules. I mean, whatever you do, make sure you keep this money separate to the point that at least you can very accurately account for what you did with this money, because you don't want to go in and ask for loan forgiveness on all of it, and then down the road them come back and say, well, actually, that was incorrect.
Hey, James, this
Absolutely.
is Chris. I wanted to say, one, you stole my thunder because that was something I was going to chime in on. It's really smart that you were doing that. The other thing is that this is a really good opportunity for everybody who does have a corporate entity to actually, here, I put myself on the screen, to actually go ahead and update your corporate governance. Like most people who form a corporation, they don't really think about, oh, there's other documentation that I have to do, and if you actually form a corporation and not a limited liability company, there's a lot more governance that goes on with that type of organization. So it's also another way for you to potentially take some time and focus on, oh, okay, well, where is my business not really up to date as well? Because this application process, it's going to force it.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. So really interesting program. So let me go back to you real quick, James. So before we jump over with Chris and talk about kind of the independent side, is there anything else we missed on the ISO side that you want to get across to them that they need to understand about these programs?
Yeah, I would. We can talk about the forgiveness period, but like I said, a lot of that is up in the air. If you're thinking of laying people off, the whole purpose is that so that you're not, and that is going to affect your forgiveness. And then you're also going to get tax credits for employees that you hold on to. So if you can hold on to your employees, I mean, it would be great if we got this money sooner, but I would count on getting it eventually, because I mean, if the money runs out and people have held on to their employees, I mean, at least you get the tax credit and you can let it go now. And obviously people are doing the things of talking to their people and things like that. So like you said, having a separate bank account, I think that's a great step, but I would absolutely implement a whole bunch of procedures, protocols on how to manage the loans. It says in there, if somebody in your business uses the money wrong, we're going after them individually. So, implement protocols, you've got to really have a checks and balance on how this money's being used. Not because I think anyone's going to jail over this, even though I guarantee a whole bunch of people are going to jail over it. No one on this call is going to jail over it because they misused the money by accident.
Right.
But, you will get the money forgiven. So here's where you implement the procedures. And what's really great is if you do these kind of procedures now, once things return to normal, you've got a great system in place to run your business a whole lot smoother. The other thing I'll add is a reason you really want to go get these things. There's also a no prepayment penalty. Go get the money. If you don't use it, send it back. Yep,
exactly. Well, and I think too, isn't it? Let's back up for 1 second. I do want to talk about the way this works as far as time frame goes and everything, because I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but this one, there are no payments at all for 6 months on the loan, right? Is that the time frame?
Yes, currently.
currently, right? And so then the idea would be, because I want to clarify for those that maybe didn't see this in the news or whatever. So let's back up and clarify. So I have an ISO. I have 100,000 a month in payroll, which is made up of employees that all make less than 100,000 a year. So it all qualifies. So that means last year I had 1.2 million in total payroll cost, 100,000 a month. So I take my total cost from last year divided by 12. I've got 100,000 a month. I multiply that by 2.5, and that's my loan amount that I can request, my maximum loan amount, which is 250,000. So I request this money. I get my 250,000. Then I can use that money to pay payroll, rent, mortgage interest, utilities, and a few other things over the course of the next 8 weeks. Whatever I use over the next 8 weeks that falls into those categories, I can submit proof of that, and then I can ask that that portion of the loan be forgiven. Did I miss anything there?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing is you're going to take a hit if you reduce your employees' pay. A lot of people are reducing their employees' pay because their employees can go get it elsewhere. So you're going to take a hit there, and you know, obviously you'll take a hit if you spend the money on anything else.
Oh,
But you got to pay interest.
Yeah, 1%, right?
During the time period, yeah, during the time period of the loan, you got to pay interest. Just even if it's forgiven, you got to pay interest while it's outstanding.
Got it. Got it. Okay. There's one other thing I forgot I was going to cover there that something that you mentioned I forgot about, but that's all right. I'll think of it later. For those of you that are asking questions right now, keep typing out your questions. After Chris's segment, we're going to do a little Q&A. We've got some time blocked out for that. So keep typing your questions out, and we'll get to those. So, all right. So James, I'm going to leave your line unmuted as well. Chris, let's go ahead and get your webcam up again here. All right. So Chris and I are going to talk a little bit more in depth about the agent stimulus. So in other words, what are some things that the individual agents can benefit from? We've covered a lot already. I know there's a lot of crossover here, but what I was kind of hoping to start with, Chris, is the unemployment compensation, because the whole idea of unemployment for 1099s is a whole new thing. So can you talk a little bit about that and this kind of new context of what unemployment means today?
Yeah, I mean, well, in the current state of unemployment, it's generally only been reserved solely for the W-2 employee. So you get fired from your job, you're out of work, you apply. It's a state-by-state run regime. So you never, this is really odd for the federal government to be involved, because normally if you ever want to apply for unemployment, you go to a state. In California, we have the Employment Development Division. They handle all of this stuff. They handle employee audits, payroll tax audits. They dispense unemployment. This is kind of interesting because, like James was talking about, that I'm going to make jokes. Well, this is something that the federal government is essentially, I think as of now, they're going to funnel all of the money to the state organizations, and the state organizations are going to be responsible to dispense these funds. But I'm not really sure who's working and where they're working from. And as far as the federal government goes, I don't know how staffed they are, because you know, the administration has kind of lessened a lot of federal government through the last few years. But under the CARES Act, you know, this has really expanded the scope of who can actually, the type of worker that can actually apply for unemployment insurance. You know, they're calling it pandemic unemployment assistance, and they've earmarked about $250 billion, and it's to supplement the normal unemployment insurance benefits that you could get under the state program. Now, it really depends on what your income is. For a lot of people, you know, some of the state program may not actually be applicable to their application, but this is 100% on top. It's a supplement not only to the benefits that you could get under a state-run program, but it's also in addition to where you're getting funds that have nothing to do with the state-run program that the federal government is making available. So some of the people that are included here are the self-employed. A big one here, at least in California, is gig workers, because there's been a lot of litigation around gig workers and their status as workers, whether they're employees or independent contractors themselves, and freelancers. So that's a really big addition. And it also covers part-time workers, furloughed employees, really anyone who can't go to a physical job space anymore, where they're not allowed to do any sort of telework, if I would call it that. You know, people like wait staff in restaurants that have ordered to be closed.
Right. Right.
People who started a job recently and they've been laid off because the business closed. You know, even if they don't have a long work history where you would normally need a certain amount of time to be eligible,
Right.
this isn't going to be a requirement for that at all. So, you know, what I look at is, like James said with the loan packages, this is like anybody and everybody. I mean, I say
Right.
you err on the side of you're going to receive the benefit of the doubt related to this.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think so. Now, let me ask you this. I just thought of this earlier today, actually. Talk to us about double dipping here, because, you know, a 1099 contractor can apply for this grant and payroll protection program, right? So, but can they also apply for unemployment? Like, is there a danger here of double dipping, and what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it depends. Like, it kind of goes back to how you were talking about having a separate bank account, right? I mean, on the one side, if the federal government is using the state apparatuses to go ahead and dole out these funds on the unemployment side, how much cross-referencing is going in with the loan packages that are being handled at the federal level through, you know, federal agents, whether, you know, banking entities and other approved lenders. And
Right.
so I don't know where it's probably going to shake out is if you don't commingle funds, people will sort of see how funds are being dispersed and what they're being dispersed for. I don't know if you have your unemployment that's actually going into your main operating account and then
Right.
you've got money being paid out. I think the possibility that this could happen is great
Yeah.
for a federal or state government to be able to review this. It beats me. I mean, I have
Right.
no idea. I don't know how far down in the weeds. I don't know if they'll end up having an audit program like the IRS does for your taxes. Who
Yeah,
knows?
well, and
But
maybe that'll be it. Maybe it's when you file your 2020 taxes, you're gonna have to say, you know, how much, where you got this money from, and maybe that, you know. But it's I think what I hear you saying is, you know, this could potentially be a situation where it might be easier to say I'm sorry than ask for permission. I don't know.
kind of, and you know, I almost feel as though, you know, you say double dipping, and a lot of times it has a negative connotation to it. Look,
Right.
right now, this is unprecedented, right? I mean,
Right.
in our lifetimes and in our
Sure.
parents' lifetimes, and, you know, keep going back. I mean, maybe in anyone's lifetime presently almost, but this is unprecedented for us. Like, the more funds that are available, even if you don't use them, I think it would be better that they're on hand for you. And that may sound, you know, crass or, you know, insensitive, but I kind of feel like, look, you know, we didn't cause this and we're just trying to survive it. And if the money's available,
Right.
you know, get it however you can.
Sure. So touch on the amount real quick before we move off of unemployment compensation. I saw some number, was it 600 a week or something that it, like, can you touch on the amount at all? Like, how are they determining how much you get? You know, what if you're a 1099 contractor and you make, you know, 200,000 a year in residual and that drops to 130? Like, can you talk a little bit about some of the number side of it?
Yeah, so this is the interesting part. I mean, generally speaking, in January 2020 this year, usually you get paid half of your weekly wages based on earnings from the previous 4 quarters. In
Right.
January of this year, on average, unemployed workers were paid $385 a week, and it was usually lasting around 26 weeks. There's been a time expansion for state benefits as well, but what the federal government has said is, we're not only going to allow you to have that, but we're going to give you half of what you would be entitled to under a state compensation and $600 a week. So one of the pushbacks on this particular legislation that went through was the fact that in some states, the amount of money, it's $15 an hour for a full-time job. Now, for some of us on the line, it might not sound like a lot, but in a place like South Carolina, where the state minimum wage is $7.25, it's
Right.
double the amount of money that you would normally be getting for a nominal job that you could go out and get. And some of the legislators thought it might be a disincentive to work, you know, and so that was sort of, you know, some of the issue that they were having related to it. But it's only for up to, you know, the 4 months. Really, the qualification is up till July 31st, 2020. You can get the money after that, but your eligibility period for it's only to that deadline. And at this point, we're all hoping that this is over So
Right.
I think it sort of makes sense.
Sure.
I mean, that would be my take, but this is kind of an example for you. I mean, to provide a comparison, after the mortgage industry collapsed in 2008 and 2009, where we saw a spike, I think the most was 665,000 unemployment at the time. And obviously this is an apples to apples,
Right.
but the benefit increase, it was only 25 bucks per week versus now they're offering you $600 per week for this period of time. So it's really meant to stabilize workers over this time period so that they can not only survive, but probably so that there's money, like fungible funds available to go out and spend when we try to kickstart this thing.
Sure. Okay, so let me kind of zoom out a little bit here and let's talk about, so W-2 employees, I think, is pretty cut and dry. We talked in the last segment about a potential for you to apply for some of the stuff if you have a side gig, but for a W-2 employee that's a sales representative that has been laid off from their job, they have unemployment compensation, which, if I hear what you're saying correctly, is that there's already the state part where you can get normally about half of what you normally make, plus there's an additional 600 a week that's available for a limited period of time through this package for W-2 employees. Is there anything else about W-2 employees that they should know, or is that's pretty much it, right? For them, that's all they can do.
No. So you can still actually be employed. I mean, this is the thing about this. And I don't want to say free money, but in a lot of respects, the pandemic unemployment assistance, I'll just call it PUA, it actually touches almost everyone. So your ability to qualify for this thing is broad. You've been diagnosed with COVID-19. A member of your household got diagnosed. You're providing care for someone. This is the one that I thought was huge, which was the most expansive. If you have to care for a child because school's not in session, right? I mean, that's anybody who has a child right now. I will tell you, my biggest transition working from home has been, what do I do with my 7-year-old? And now I have to learn how to homeschool her as well as juggle work. So, that's something that's difficult. If you've had to be quarantined, if you started employment, but then you couldn't go to the job. There are a couple of exceptions that you do have to look out for, which is, can I telework? And then is it being offered to me and I'm being paid for it? I thought that one was something that was really important that should be paid attention to. But I do think that even a reduction in income as a W-2 will allow you to make an application to address the reduction.
Sure. Okay. And help me understand too, I didn't post any links about this because I'm not familiar with the side of it. For a W-2 employee right now, or I guess 1099, look at the unemployment piece. I'm assuming you just go through your normal unemployment thing through the state, or is there some additional thing that needs to be done for this extra 600?
So this is the interesting part, is right now, and it's, you go on and you do some research on it. Some states have been really proactive. I guess things are a little tight in Michigan because they almost immediately passed something through the governor. I think Arizona was pretty quick on it as well. But it depends. If the state has a larger apparatus like California, trying to implement this into their process, I think is going to be a little bit more difficult. But it should be very easy to apply for. You go to your state organization that manages unemployment benefits. But just like the loan packages, I don't know how set in stone everything's going to be. I don't know what the picture looks like. This is a snapshot legislation. It's a snapshot based on today and what we think is going to happen going forward. So I don't know if they're going to be so overrun that they're going to need to push back to the Department of Labor. Could be. I mean, we'll see.
Sure. Okay. All right. So that's W-2. So then let's talk about 1099, because I think ironically the 1099s are probably faced with actually the more complex issue because of how they're kind of straddling both worlds a little bit here as the individual programs and the ISO programs, or I should say the business side. So I'm a 1099 contractor. I currently make $90,000 a year, apart from residual, apart from upfront money. Because of COVID-19, my income's dramatically reduced. I have to be at home. I'm helping out with my kids. This is my situation. So, in the last few minutes we have, before we get to the stimulus check here, can you just break it down one more time? I'm an independent contractor. What should I be looking into, and what should I be potentially applying for?
So you should be looking at, you're having the talk earlier about disposable income. I mean, I think part of COGS is when you're a 1099 is, you pay yourself. So you're self-employed sorry, not just self-employed individuals, but 1099 agents. As you're getting paid, you've got to look at what your actual income is minus your business expenses, and then look at the reduction. I think you could look at it gross, you could look at it net, but you should be looking at the delta of whatever that reduction is that is greater, and making an application. And I at this point, I think the worst thing that could happen is somebody says no or asks you for more information, or decides to analyze your information a little bit different. But I see this as no different than a W-2 employee. This is open for anybody who has been impacted by COVID-19. So make an application. If you've gone from 90 to you're on pace for 45 based on the fact your income's been reduced to 10% of what it normally is, make that application. Like, just go to your state and do as much as you can, because I don't think this is going to bridge the gap for everyone, but I definitely think that this is going to allow a stabilization, at least to get through this time until things kickstart. So I don't see it as being anything different. Just look at it the exact same way, and don't think you have limitation.
Got it. So 1099 contractors, they want to look at their loss in income and look at the unemployment stuff. They want to apply for the EIDL Advance, and potentially they want to look at the Paycheck Protection Program for themselves as well, right?
Correct. And like you said earlier, I don't know how they're going to check amongst all these, except for an audit after the fact, maybe. But I think have the money on hand. We don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
Yeah, just have it.
Right. And it's probably a bad idea to take it and, blow it all the next day on something, superfluous. But, it's a good idea to have the money, again, maybe a separate bank account or something, and see how things shake out when the dust settles. But, these programs are being made available. So, okay, so last one for you before we get into Q&A. And again, if you have questions, you can start typing them out. I'm sure there's going to be a lot, so we'll do our best to sort through them in about 20 or 30 minutes of Q&A before we move on with Patty's segment. But before we get to that, I think the easiest and simplest thing of all this is the stimulus check. So can you just run through with us the amount, how this works, and what, if anything, people might need to do to receive this money?
Yeah, you don't have to do anything except, and I meant to say this earlier, look, you got time right now, file your tax return. I know we got an extension out until July, but just file them, because a lot of this is going to be dictated on 2019 income. If you had a better 2018 for some of the loan packages, I think you can still use those numbers versus 2019. But just get your tax return done, get it on file. But as it relates to the stimulus check, you don't have to do anything, because they're just going to look at tax returns. And the question is whether or not you're eligible. For individuals, it's up to $75,000. And for couples, it's $150,000. If you have children, well, let me back up. For $75,000, you get a $1,200 check. For couples, it's up to $2,400. I believe I want to say it's $600 per child under 17. I'm sorry, it's $500 for each qualifying child. And this is just going to come to you. There is a step down too. So even though they have thresholds for, going over 75,000 or 150,000, there's a step down of $5 for each $100 that you go over. So if you're close, you could be getting extra money on top of it. So I don't think you're capped out at the 1,200, 2,400. That's just where the thresholds stop you. And then from there, it's going to come down very quickly. But you don't have to do anything. The one proactive thing that I would suggest that you do is look this up, go to the IRS's website, and if they allow you to, put in direct deposit information so you don't have to deal with a check. I think I read in one article that recently that they said it could be up to 20 weeks to receive any of these stimulus checks if you're doing it by mail.
Right. Versus, so what I think you're saying is, when you file your tax returns as an individual, you can have your bank information on file with the IRS for pay taxes or get your return, or you can actually do a check. If they have your information on file for direct deposit, you're going to get the money faster, because it's going to be hit right to your account versus waiting on a check in the mail.
Correct. But if you don't file a tax return, I think that there is a way through the IRS website, irs.gov, that you can actually put in your information and correlate it to your TIN.
Got it. Cool. Awesome.
or your
Uh,
SSN in this particular instance.
Sure. So before we get to Q&A, Chris, is there anything else that you want to say to the individual, the 1099s and the W-2s? Anything that you feel like we missed in there that we didn't cover?
No, I think I'm going to like preamble into what you're going to do at the remainder is, you know, believe it or not, our firm was born out of the 2008 mortgage crisis. I mean, it was so many
Yep.
people came into the payment space, including myself, and as an attorney. And this is, if you look at this right, this is actually a time for opportunity. It gives you the time to sit and reflect on, hey, what's my business do? What am I good at? What am I not good at? What do I want to try to do? You know, how can I innovate? What's available in this particular marketplace? And I think that there's a lot of opportunity right now to actually get better and leave behind people who were in a really good economy and being successful. If you can be successful right now, this will only springboard you to greater success.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was talking to Patty, who I'll have on here in a minute. We were recording a podcast interview right before this, and I told her, I said, I literally think that right now, of all the other businesses, I'm in this office building. Of all the other businesses, I literally think I'm the only person right now that's working. I said, there's something about that I really like. I mean, of course, my main concern is health and safety, but it's like, to a certain extent, business is a competition. And if you want to sit around and do nothing, that's not really a winning strategy under any circumstances. So if you're healthy, if your family's healthy and you're safe, then let's do something. This is a time for opportunity. So all right, so let's do this. Let me get you guys both back up on here. Let's see, James, if you want to unmute your line, there you go. So here's what I'm going to do. We're gonna run through some questions here. While I do that, I'm going to leave this up on the screen here because I just really appreciate Chris and James both taking their time. They donated this time to help us understand these complex issues. They were even kind enough right before the event. They asked me to go ahead and put their personal email addresses here on the slide. So that way, if you do have any follow-up questions that we don't cover here and you want to shoot them an email, go for it. Do me a favor, if one of you would just hop in here right before we get to the Q&A section here. Can you give us the 30-second elevator pitch for Global Legal Law Firm and what you do for the payments industry, so people kind of know, why they should reach out to you and different issues you handle?
You want me to? Well, I will tell you that we are kind of out of the box guys. We fit ISOs and agents really well. We're pretty solutions oriented. We do a wide array of services. And I think the biggest thing is that we're business owners and we're small business owners. And so we kind of understand not only our clients, but their target market a lot of times. We're here to create relationships with people, relationships that are going to span entire careers if possible. And so if you come to us, we're going to do a good job. We're going to be honest with you about where you're at. And we work on relationship more than anything else. But we've got a really broad perspective on the payments industry because we run in this world, and there's, ISO is not a single definition. Agent's not a single definition. So we see a lot of opportunity. And the thing that we do too is we actually help people connect with other people.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I love it. So again, got the contact information right there. Definitely reach out. Now let me say real quick how the rest of this event is going to go, so you know when you should or should not jump off of the event. So we've got about 20 minutes here to do Q&A. We've got a ton of questions. I'm not going to get to everybody's question, but I'm going to try to look for themes and ask some questions here to Chris and James. After that, Patty Murphy and I are going to spend about 20 minutes talking about the impact on small business owners specifically and how to work with them. And then following that, I'm going to do about 20 minutes or so on how to sell over the phone and give you information about how to get into the phone sales framework for success that I put together, that I'm not going to charge anything to anybody as long as they're already with our all access pass, which we'll talk about in a minute. But you can get that for free as well. So I'll talk about all that at the end. So with that being said, let's dive in and take some questions here. So this will be an interesting one for both of you to answer. So one of the themes I'm seeing in the questions is, what is going to happen as a result of the government, printing all this money or borrowing all this money or wherever this money is coming from? Do you guys have any thoughts on, are there long-term repercussions we should be prepared for in terms of inflation or things like that? Just kind of looking for any opinion you might have on that.
I'll start. Does anybody remember the Great Depression? It's a joke.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I think it looks pretty bad. We printed a whole bunch of money. the nice thing is we didn't start from zero. We started way ahead of where we were last time.
Right. Sure.
But yeah, this is going to hit a slump, and it's going to hit hard. But I think what they're doing here is kind of what they're doing with the virus in general is we're just trying to delay things out. If all of your merchants go out of business at once, that's a problem. But if we can give them a bunch of money so that slow down the curve of people going out of business at the same time, it's going to help is delay it just to keep the economy in general going. But I iterate Chris's message here is that this is a time of tremendous opportunity for ISOs in particular. Think of, one thing is think of all the businesses that are going out of business and the ones that backfill. You've got fresh meat out there. Go get them. Look at the businesses that are going out, your merchants, and talk to them about their successor. Talk to building owners. They're going to be happy to talk to you right now because they're freaking out. Sure. So the opportunities are abound, but yeah, certainly, this is inflation. It's happening. I don't think, my thing is, hey, let's just buy like 10 less missiles and we'll pay for this. I haven't heard that happening though. I think that this is literally money being printed. I'll get Chris's opinion on it because he has a different one.
Go ahead, Chris.
Well, I definitely think that we're going to see like widespread inflation, but I think we see widespread inflation as it is. I mean, cost of things has increased steadily at an alarming rate over the last couple of years, even though the economy's been expanding. But this is going to be interesting, and I have a tendency to also share James's notion of this is an opportunity to actually take some risk. I mean, there are opportunities right now that are sitting in front of you that you may not have wanted to try before that you actually have the time to game plan and implement as things start back up. I think the biggest concern that I see, besides monetary inflation in 18 to 24 months, is our economy is like the Titanic, right? I mean, it goes down. It's a big ship. You don't stop a ship that's that large and then just restart it and get moving at the same velocity that we were moving before. So I think that a lot of the excess amount of funds that are going to be dispensed here has to do more with the fact that it's not like we're going to turn on the on switch. Unfortunately, it's going to take a few months to actually get up and moving again. And that's why this time right now to kind of satisfy the creditors that are sitting there, that's more or less just, it's for me, I just see stability and then we'll figure it out.
Sure. Well, and I mean, even if it was all deficit spending, it would increase the deficit probably around 7 or 8%, which is, historic, but I mean, not game over. So we'll see how it plays out. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do, guys. So let's do some rapid fire questions. I'll try to get through a bunch of these. Just give us a real quick, one of you just jump in, give us your thoughts real quick on this. Some of this was already covered a little bit, but Alan says, my accountant is looking into commission being paid out, which to 1099 contractor reps, and that would be considered payroll. We're waiting for them to research this. So for the purposes of payroll protection program, what are your thoughts on commission paid out to 1099 contractors? Is that considered payroll or not?
Yes.
I'd say yeah.
Okay. By the way, a lot of people asked if it's recorded. Yes, this is being recorded. It'll be a special episode on our podcast as well as a very, very long YouTube video. So
I'll caveat that. I will just say again is look at the cap of 100 grand. So don't go over 100 grand per independent contractor.
Yeah, and the other thing is over 100 grand, it wouldn't count.
They're not looking to screw you, right? I mean, I personally believe that they're not looking to see if you're cutting corners or not. This is really nondescript. Do what you think is appropriate and don't overreach.
Sure. This question was asked in different forums and I'll answer it real quick. If you're a small office and you pay yourself, can you get money? Yes, lots of it. Okay. Let's see. Same question about the 1099 contractors. So you're saying business, hold on here, you write proof. So do you need to provide proof of expenses, income, and business operations to some extent? Can you touch on what has to be provided to get the money? And then also as far as the loan, what's it called? Forgiveness.
Not
Yeah.
right now on the first part of your question. For the forgiveness, yes.
Right.
No,
So
but
very,
on the
very
pay,
simple application.
on the payroll protection, I do believe that you have to give your last 12 months of payroll
Yep.
or
Form 941.
last year, and then yeah, there are items for certain sections of it that you if you have documentation, they're going to want it, but otherwise, no.
Exactly. Lots of other questions about, what if we have two partners? What if we just have a couple of employees? But the answer is yes, 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 yes. You qualify to get money. So you need to go apply and research more. And that was more early on when we hadn't answered those questions yet.
Wait, I will add to that. There is an important caveat, is that anyone with 20% or more interest in your company does have to participate in this application, and that's following probably the beneficial owner rule. So I would say also,
Yep,
20% interest can get a little tricky in our industry. So be wary of that, of who's signing off on this.
sure. Really good question. Somebody asked, how did I apply for the payroll protection program today? Citibank is not allowing it yet. What happened was, because of the advice, the final ruling or whatever that came out last night, I think it's 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, a lot of the banks said, look, this is too last minute. We need to wait and let the dust settle Monday or Tuesday, because they actually have online application processes, most of the larger Wells Fargos and Citibanks. But I work with a local regional bank, and they were just using the basic SBA paper application anyway. So they said it wasn't a problem. So that's how I was able to apply today. Depends on your bank. As was said already, you definitely need to go through your bank for this. And this is one of those times when it's good to have a good relationship with your bank, since they are the ones that are making pretty much all of these decisions at this time. So
I'll also say, James, that the some of these banks' web portals, they couldn't handle the volume that was coming at them too. I heard that.
sure. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Yeah, and again, like somebody mentioned that if you applied, they may have changed the paperwork. So this is a great example. I won't get into the weeds, but my bank actually didn't even know about the change. That I read it this morning. So before I went over there to drop it off, there was a couple extra forms that I included that they hadn't even asked for. So I think it really is important at this time. It's amazing that we're in the information age, which has come to us at a time where most people refuse to look at information. If you really want to make money from this, it might benefit you to take an hour or two of your time and actually read the information, and you might come out of this with like $30,000. So that could be a really profitable, amount of time. But definitely do the research. Go to sba.gov, research the information there. I did put the links for everything we talked about today over in the chat. So if you look at the chat, the links are there. If you don't see a link to something, everything we talked about, except for the stimulus check, everything we talked about is at sba.gov. Where do they go for the stimulus check, guys? Is that the irs.gov to learn more about
IRS.gov.
that?
IRS.
The answer, has anybody gotten the 10,000 in 3 days? From what you guys said, that 3-day clock supposedly started today if you put your request in for the advance. Is that right? Okay. All right. So I'll let you know. I'll tweet my the picture of my account when I get it. So we'll see what happens. Let's see here.
Be sure to include the account number.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Another concern about this cost of goods sold versus total operating expenses. Let's touch on that one more time, because that honestly was the only confusing thing on that form. So let me clarify and frame this. So when you go to apply for the advance, they only ask you 2 pieces of information about the financial whatever of your company. They don't ask you anything else. All they ask is, for the last 12 months, what was your total income? And then what was your cost of goods sold, or total revenue and cost of goods sold? So just to clarify one more time, now, our company, we actually used our total operating expenses, because we're like, our cost of goods sold, we don't sell goods, it's services. And so our cost of services is like very, very minimal. It's basically payroll. So we just put our total operating expenses. What are your thoughts on what would go in that box? Any thoughts, guys?
Yeah, cost of goods sold is an accounting term for manufacturing.
Right.
Doesn't really apply to services as much. I think that you should be putting in everything that you use to create your product. So you might have individual expenses that are just yours that you need, and then there are expenses that go into actually providing the service. That, to me, total operating expenses, I think that's a safe bet. And if they want to claw back and reduce it, fine. But I say, I don't think you're out of line if you go to that number.
Okay. And that's what we kind of did that to think that was going on the safe side of it. Because again, for service, kind of like all of our expenses, most of them anyway, are part of that. So let me see here. Oh wait, here we go. I called the SBA when I filled mine out. My accountant was with me. I was told since I don't have a true cost of goods that we put 0 for cost of goods. So there's
Wow.
the other extreme. Thus highlighting the massive amount of misinformation that currently exists. So, again, my banker told me, total expenses, the SBA and this individual's accountant said to put 0 there. So again, I think the big takeaway, and guys, correct me if I'm wrong, again, as you pointed out, I don't think anybody's looking to screw you here. They're looking like they just want to get this money out into the economy at this time. And so I'd say fill it out and get it done and then, see where it shakes out.
James, one thing I'd add on to that is think about what the audit process would look like for the, I mean, think about the problems that they're going to have just rolling out this beneficial program. Now
Yep.
think about the infrastructure to run an audit program on this. I mean, like, good
Yep.
luck.
Oh, here's a good question. For the EIDL, as a single member LLC, should I apply as a sole proprietor or a business with not more than 500 employees?
Business with not more than 500 employees.
Yep.
You're considered a partnership for taxation purposes. You're not a sole prop.
A sole prop is where your tax identification number is the same as your social security number generally, right?
Generally, yes.
Okay. While it's forgiveness, you still have to qualify for it, right? I mean, can you talk about qualifications for the payroll protection program? I don't even, are there any? Like to get approved?
You've got to submit your payroll for 2019 in the first quarter if you can get a hold of it.
Right.
But I mean, that is the qualification. It's your payroll times 2.5.
Yeah, it's like submit the paperwork, and I mean, maybe there are qualifications we're not even aware of yet, but as far as what's been published, submit the paperwork and get approved is kind of the message that's been put out. As long as the money's still there, because it's first come, first serve.
Yeah, it would be nice if they were checking for people who really need it, but I don't think they are.
But this is the government, so we're not expecting too much. Okay, let's see here. Give me 1 second here. Oh, if you apply for the EIDL loan, can you also apply for unemployment? Who do we ask when all the information is changing and no one really knows and we can't call anyone? Well, we'll answer the first question. The second question, can't really help you too much with that. But you guys have any thoughts on that? I think we already answered that one a little later on.
Apply for everything you think you qualify for.
There you go. I'm incorporated, but I'm the only employee. But having been using my payroll provider for close to a year, I do pay all the proper taxes. My accountant picks up the management fee. So yeah, if you are a single member LLC and you are also an employee of the LLC, what would that mean? I guess as long as you're still paying yourself, then you would do the payroll protection program, right?
I think you can qualify for all of it. So any money that's flowing out of the business directly to the individual, I think that is the amount of money. The reason you would pay payroll is to lower your tax burden at the end of the year by paying throughout the year. I mean, because we do it too. So that's really the purpose of W-2ing your self-income, is to make sure you're paying in over time. I don't think I still think your distributions you can count. So I think you could probably count that as payroll. It goes back to the conversation we were having about 1099s being included for an ISO. Why not?
Yep. Okay. Here's a really good question.
My caveat on that is if you get approved, because you do have to have a certification that you're not getting funds from elsewhere and that you haven't applied for elsewhere. So I would do the ones that we're talking about first, the disaster loans. Right. And then if you end up getting them both, don't use them both for the same purpose.
Sure, understood. Here's an interesting one. If I am a single member S Corp, but behind in taxes, would I be disqualified? And I did actually see something on the Paycheck Protection Program, where you had to agree that you don't currently owe the U.S. government any money. It was very vague. Have you guys seen anything along these lines about if you're behind on your taxes, does that disqualify you in any way?
Not on the loans necessarily, but I think
I haven't
on
seen that at
the
all.
Okay.
yeah.
It might have just been something on my, because each bank has their own documentation a little bit, but that's a good question. So I think the idea would be still go ahead and apply. I mean, obviously, if there's a question on there about that specifically, then but I haven't seen anything that would specifically say you're disqualified based on owing back taxes, which that is a really big concern. I can tell you a lot of 1099 reps, because the taxes aren't withheld. Sometimes they have a bad year at the end of the year or something, and they haven't paid their taxes for 12 months or 18 months, and they filed, but they didn't pay the taxes.
Well,
Call
it
the
says,
IRS and get into a monthly payment program right now.
yeah, it says delinquent. So if you're in a payment plan, you're not technically delinquent. But yeah, if they're coming after you, typically they're not coming after you for very long. They just take the money from wherever it goes. So
Right.
if they're coming after you right now, yes, you will have a problem. But if you're in a payment plan, you're okay, and you can do that online.
And you have until June, what is it? When's the end when they can apply for these loan programs? Is it June 30th?
Okay, this is a moving target. At first they're saying December, and now it's back down to June because they think the money's going to be gone, I'm sure, is why they're shrinking it. But yes, it says June 30th right now.
Got it. So maybe you could go get a payment plan with the IRS if you don't have one right now, so that you aren't delinquent on your taxes. You're just doing a payment plan and then apply for the loan. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, but the payment plan typically is automatic unless you owe way too much, but even still, you're going to get approval within like a day or two. So yeah,
Right.
I would just go do that right away.
Yep. Let's see here. Get payroll. Yeah, and see, again, still some questions around this, but again, it says if I don't take money via payroll, can I still get a stimulus check? So they're asking a 1099 contractor, do they still qualify for a stimulus check?
Yes.
Oh, stimulus? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's anybody who's filing for taxes that has income.
Oh, here's a good one. If I have a home office, can I use the EIDL to pay my home mortgage payment?
I wouldn't mess with that. It's like the most common audit trigger.
Yeah, that's the red flag.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Yeah, don't do that.
No, but you already can use it for mortgage though. So
for mortgage interest, right?
yeah.
Oh, by the way, two other things real quick. I just remembered what it was from a while back. The payroll protection program, you do have to keep your employees. I don't think we touched on that sufficiently, but so like I'll give you a really specific example. For my company, when all this happened, I laid just about everybody off very quickly because I'm like, whoa, hold on, let's back up and see what's happening. And so I kept a few people, but laid a lot of my employees off. But once I found out about this program, I have to bring my employees back. I believe you have to be you guys would maybe know better. I think you have to be at 90% of your payroll, like from February 15th. If you had like how many employees you had February 15th, you have to bring all those people back at kind of their same general level. So to qualify for the payroll protection program, it's called the payroll protection program for a reason. Do you guys have anything to add to that?
Only for forgiveness.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, of
okay.
course, for forgiveness. Yes.
Only for forgiveness, and you can rehire them once you get the money.
Right. Right. Yep. Yes, Chris, the math is correct. It's to figure out the amount of the loan, the payroll protection program loan. It's 1 month, one average month of payroll. There's several different ways to calculate it, but if you look at an average month of payroll multiplied by 2.5, when you fill out the application, they'll have specifics in there. Like mine actually said specifically, we want you to use your 2019 complete year of payroll and divide that by 12 to get the month.
James, there was one other thing I forgot. For seasonal, they had a little bit different criteria where they said that you could take like 2 to 3 months depending on, because like tax preparers, they're February to May or something like that. So for whatever they deem seasonal workers, they had a different calculation, but I just intended to give them our 2019 if we did it.
Yep. We'll do 2 more questions and then we'll have to be done and move on. I love this one. What if I don't really need the money? I'll let you guys answer. What are your thoughts on that?
Get it
Somebody's like,
anyways.
I'm good. Yeah.
Get it, and you don't know.
Get it.
You don't know. You might not need
What if
it
you're gonna need it
today.
in a
What
month?
if?
You know?
Yeah, get it, and then what I said earlier is create a record. Hey, based on discussions of what's happening in the industry, it looks like in the future this could be a drop, and it's not things that if this keeps going. You could even say something of, hey, I listened to a podcast today with some industry professionals, and they're all saying that there's going to be a severe downturn and a financial, economic impact on our business that we need to plan for.
Yep.
So
Okay.
create that record contemporaneously. You can't create it later, but how that works.
Yep.
So,
So here's my favorite one. We'll end
The
with
other
this.
thing is, well, it's a
Chris.
bridge, right? I mean, if you wanted to sit here and plan out for the next few months, say you were somewhat idle, it's a bridge to cover those primary expenses. You could have people working on your next initiative for Q3, Q4 this year, where you don't have any worry about expenses. So why wouldn't you go get it?
Yep. So that's great. I love this last one because it really drives home the value for those of you that have been on here for the last hour and 20 minutes. And it's like, wow, was this hour and 20 minutes worth your time? Here you go. So Doug says, I'm a 1099 agent and I made $96,000 last year as a 1099 agent. He's like, you're telling me I can apply for $20,000 and it could be qualified to be forgiven. So let's run the math real quick. 96,000 divided by 12. Your average payroll was $8,000 a month times 2.5. You could apply for a $20,000 payroll protection program loan. That money would be given to you as long as you use that money to continue paying yourself the way you have in the past. In addition to paying your rent, if you have an office or utilities and things like that, then yes, that amount could be forgiven. So did I miss anything there, guys? Doug just made 20 grand, right?
Yeah.
yeah, probably a little bit more too when
I was
he
gonna
looks
say.
at what his total output is. 'Cause
Right.
It's not just him. There's other things that go into it. So yeah.
Yep. So yeah, Doug, you just made 20 grand. So congratulations, and I'm glad you're able to attend. All right. So guys, we'll stop it there, and I'm going to move over to Patty. I want to say again, thank you so much for your time, James and Chris. Again, their contact information is right here on the screen. Make sure you reach out to them if you need help negotiating contracts, agreements, anything having to do with the payments industry and the business side of it. So I really appreciate you guys. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, James.
Okay, so let's see here. We are going to, let me get these going here. So let's see, Patty, let me see if I can get you on here.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you
I think-
great.
And I think you can see me as well.
Oh yeah, I see it. There it is. There you go. How's it going, Patty?
Hey, James, it's going great. Long time no see.
No, as I think you all know at this point, Patty is the co-host with me of our Merchant Sales podcast, and Patty is just really an expert at digging into the data and finding things out. And so I asked her to dive in and kind of give us a little bit of context on the small business side. So Patty, can you get us started off with a little bit of context? Again, a lot of information that we all just learned, a lot of agents may be reeling from this a little bit. Can you give us a little context about the CARES Act and kind of the magnitude of just how big this program is?
Yeah, well, first of all, I commend you. I think the lawyers, I have to admit, that was so enlightening, and I'm sure everybody else was tracking along with me. Some really good insight there. You know,
Very good.
James, and as you said, I am the sort of the queen of data. As anybody who's listened to the podcast knows. That being said, the small businesses are said to be the engine that keeps our economy running, and the proof is in the numbers. There are 30 million small businesses in the U.S., which the Small Business Administration defines as a business with fewer than 500 employees.
Right.
Now, the sector of that is services, professional services, as well as other service sectors. They account for almost 9 million of those businesses. About 2.6 are classified as retail trade businesses, and about 1.4 million are arts, entertainment, and recreation. You take these 30 million businesses, they employ roughly 60 million people, which is about just shy of half of the total private sector workforce, about 48% according to the SBA. So, 60 million people, that's a lot of employees out there on payrolls. And as we've discussed, a lot of those people are now, either being laid off or were had to be laid off.
Right.
Small businesses make up 99% of U.S. businesses. 98% of small businesses employ fewer than 100 employees, and 89% employ fewer than 20 people.
Yep.
Now, and as we said, all of these businesses are potential candidates for the Paycheck Protection Act, which is, as the lawyers, as James and Chris explained eloquently, are authorizes loans up to 10 million each to cover
Right.
payroll and other overhead, and and they can be forgiven. I mean, it's like a money spigot,
Right. Right.
And as you attested to, the application process is very easy. It's a 2-page document, takes about 15 minutes to complete.
Right.
But and one of the other things that Chris and James did not necessarily delve into that I thought was interesting is, a lot of small businesses out there already have SBA loans.
Yes.
Or else they might apply for SBA loans outside of these programs. And as part of the CARES Act, there's also an SBA bridge loan program, which allows people to access up to $25,000 in advances while waiting for SBA loans to come through.
Sure.
So, on top of, the paycheck protection and expanded unemployment and, these grants, the $20,000
Right.
that we were talking about from the last questioner. There's also an option if you're really hurting and you're still waiting for money. These bridge loans can be a real help, and I think they can be especially a good help to some of our merchants.
Yeah. So I think the important thing is we really want to kind of shift the focus now. So because a lot of you were thinking as we went through the last hour and a half of yourself, right? And so what about your clients? And Patty, one interesting experiment I did, numbers wise, I was concerned about what if this program runs out of money. And I thought one interesting number that gives a little context to the size of this program. So you mentioned there's 60 million employees of small businesses. If you took 50 million people and you paid them $500 a week for 8 weeks, which is the payroll protection program is an 8-week thing, that's $250 billion. And there's $350 billion in the payroll protection, or in the overall funding available for businesses. So just to kind of give you a context of how big this is, it's literally enough money to pay everybody that works for a small business for, probably, I don't know, 12 weeks or something like that. So it really is an enormous amount of money that's available.
The irony to me that I see here is, remember when Andrew Yang was running for in the primaries for the Democratic presidential nod, I think he said something about giving everybody $1,000 a month. There was, remember the program we had, and everybody was like, "Oh, that's crazy." Well, basically, that's what we're doing.
This is about 5 times that, right?
Right.
So,
I mean, but it's still, I mean, that's where it works out. I mean, that I had done a similar calculation to yours, James, and that's about what I came out with as well. I mean, this is a really great opportunity, and it's not just an opportunity. I mean, I think James and Chris talked a lot about the opportunities for ISOs and agents, but this is a tremendous opportunity for your merchant clients and an opportunity for you to be proactive in helping your merchant clients get access to this.
Sure. So let's start with the $10,000, Patty. So talk about the $10,000, and do you feel like a lot of small business owners out there, a lot of our clients maybe don't know about this, maybe don't know they qualify for this? Is this something agents should be out there talking to their merchants about?
Definitely, James. If I were an agent, and particularly think about it, I mean, what do we, something like 40 of the states are, so most of the people out there listening, I'm sure, are not out on the street, right? They're not knocking on doors. So this would be an excellent opportunity for you to start reaching out to your clients, whether it be by email. Frankly, I think email or text messaging is going to be better than phoning these people at this point in time. And come up with something like, hey, did you know, I know that this is a really rough time for you, it's been a rough time for everybody, but are you aware of the fact that there are government programs that can help you keep going, help you keep your employees on payroll, meet your
Right.
expenses, and all you have to do is click on this link and go to the SBA to learn more.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's
and I
a
think
really simple
yep.
proactive step.
And imagine if one of your merchants is
And
not
it is so
currently aware of it. I mean, you're literally going to make them, tens of thousands of dollars that they didn't even know they could get.
Well, I'll tell a simple aside. I was talking to a friend last night who runs a trade association, and I was working on my notes for today. And she's like, "What are you working on?" And I told her, and she's like, "Man, I wish my members could benefit from this." And I'm like, "Your members can."
Right.
Take a look at this. I sent her a copy of my notes, and while I was listening to James and Chris, I was getting emails from her saying, "Wait a minute, you mean my members can get a $10,000 advance even if they don't have a lot of employees?" And I'm like, yeah, there's so many businesses, and that's the thing that I thought that I'm not sure we mentioned it earlier. But the important thing to remember, and I know several ISOs and agents out there that sell to not-for-profits. These
Right.
are available to not-for-profits as well,
Yep.
and not
Absolutely.
only the not-for-profits but their members.
Right. Right. Yep.
And
Absolutely. So then I wanted to touch on a couple of things with the Paycheck Protection Program. So, many small business owners have laid their employees off, even though they really could continue to work remotely. In some cases, they couldn't, but
right.
in those situations where they could work remotely, could you talk for a second about what would be the rationale and what would you talk to these small business clients about potentially bringing their employees back on payroll by being able to take advantage of this Paycheck Protection Program so they don't lose their best people?
Well, I think part of that is that, it's interesting. I've read some things about it. It's like, you mean to tell me I can keep paying my guys even if they're sitting at home? It's like,
Right.
well, yeah, but you want them sitting at home doing something.
Right. Right.
It may be just making customer service calls, or it may be just updating the website or doing social media work for you. I talked to a couple people that are doing that. As a matter of fact, they have employees who were answering phones or working on the front desk. The business had to
Right.
close down, so now they have their employees working at home doing social media marketing for them.
Yep.
I talked to a what do you call it? A warehouse that does distribution, terminal distributions.
Sure.
It's not task, but a task like kind of place, right? And they were telling me what they have done is they have sent all their employees home. They're except for the guys in the warehouse, obviously. They have kept a skeleton crew in the warehouse, but
Right.
all of their call center operations are being operated from employees' homes using a virtual private network, right? VPN.
Right. Yep.
And so, the point is that I think what it's going to require is thinking outside the box. Okay, you can't, okay, you're running a restaurant. Well, you can't have your chef working remotely, right?
Right.
You can't have your wait staff. So maybe that isn't necessarily going to work. But maybe you can take some of your wait staff and reassign them to doing deliveries, or
Right.
reassign them to doing marketing.
Right. And
As long as you
I think what this program does, Patty, is it gives these small business owners the ability now to take that risk where before they might be like, well, how could we do that? What if we bring these people back and what if this idea doesn't work and we don't make any money? Well, the bottom line is if you do this correctly, you can wait till you get the money before you bring all your people back. And then once you bring them all back, the
right,
government is going to be paying for that expense for the next 8 weeks. So it gives you that 8-week
right.
window to try and launch that delivery service, right?
Right. Create a better online presence. Get maybe what you need. Maybe you're a marketing company, right? Maybe you just need to bring people together and brainstorm for a while to come up with new marketing campaigns. I have a brother-in-law who's in marketing, and that's what they're doing. A lot of their clients have slackened back, so they're doing daily Zoom calls where they brainstorm about what's some new value we can deliver to our clients. So in the services sector, I think it's particularly easy. I think it might not be as easy, for example, in restaurants and entertainment, because so many of them have been shuttered, but there are options. I mean, maybe you can be doing some sort of online entertainment venue. Maybe you can get your people working on. It's a really, what I see this as is the government is paying you to pay people so that you can keep your business going. And we're in an era where businesses are transforming. So basically, the government is paying you to help you transform your business. And the job for the ISO and the agent is to let their clients know that these opportunities exist and help them to capitalize on them.
Sure. So one other thing I want to touch on real quick before we get to some final thoughts on SBA loans. As you mentioned about restaurants, there are going to be some business types where maybe it's a fine dining restaurant, they're not going to do delivery, and it's a hair salon. Well, how could people work remotely with a hair salon? It's
Right.
just not possible. So there are going to be businesses where they can't bring their people back, right? And so for them, it's like, well, we can't bring our people back. But one thing that hasn't been talked about very much is small business owners are not just, if they were profiteering money grubbers, then they would probably be doing other things and cutting corners to build a bigger business. They're a small business because they're passionate about what they do and about their people. So I think a lot of them are really, frustrated. I'm speaking from personal experience. Several of the employees I had to lay off initially, they went from making, $50,000 a year to $300 a week, in unemployment. And, it's like, oh, wow, like then I started realizing I got to get these people back. I can't leave them like this for very long because I want to keep my good people. So talk, Patty, about, isn't some of this unemployment stuff and this increase, isn't that going to maybe, just communicating that to our small business clients, isn't that going to set their mind at ease a little bit that their people are going to be taken care of a little bit better?
Oh, and for sure, James, for sure. Because think about it. I've talked to several business owners who are, especially in the restaurant area, where they're, sleepless nights, and how are we going to, I can't stand the fact that I had to let all these people go, and John has 5 kids, and Mary has, is taking care of her, grandmother or whatever, right? So think about this. Suddenly you have to let these people go, but knowing that the government is going to make unemployment so much easier for them to collect and allow them to collect it for so much longer, you can breathe a sigh of relief. Like, and the fact is that if you're laying off these employees today, they're not going to go out and get another job tomorrow. There's no place to get another job.
Right.
I mean,
well, and especially when income is being replaced at that kind of level.
Especially when the income's being replaced at that kind of level. But even so, even before that was the case, I know a couple people who got laid off, and they were like, I have no place to go. There's nobody's hiring right now. I mean, where would I go get a job? So, rather than being in that situation and being fretful and taking anything and therefore not being available when your company goes back online, now the company owner can say, okay, look, my guys are being taken care of. The government's helping take care of them. I can get my business back in order. I can get that worry off my plate and, get back to business sooner.
Sure. And of course, these business owners, even though they weren't able to bring their employees back, they can get that relief for themselves, whether it's through unemployment or
exactly.
So it's all of a sudden they can make
right, and they know that their employees are, their now laid off employees are in a better, are not being left for naught. The government is helping them. They're going to get by. They're going to get a stimulus check. They're going to get unemployment. They're going to get this, additional kick in from the feds, and it'll be okay. It'll be a little bit tough, but then again, let's be realistic. A lot of them are on stay-at-home orders, so they're not going out and spending a ton of money,
Sure.
right? I mean,
Yep.
they're able to cover the essentials,
Right.
and I think that's going to make a lot of people, employees as well as employers, breathe a lot easier. And
Yeah.
again, it goes to what our folks, the ISOs and agents, can bring to the table.
Yep. So
In terms of helping to allay these concerns.
Yeah. So last thing real quick, just touch on, we talked a lot about the Paycheck Protection Program, the EIDL grants, the unemployment, but, there's also funding that is being made available that's maybe not part of this, loan forgiveness type stuff. So can you talk a little bit about, are there other funding opportunities out there the SBA currently has funding for that are outside of the two programs that we really focused on, that, things just to cover other expenses and maybe business growth and just trying to get through this time? You mentioned bridge loans. Is there anything else kind of along those lines that you want to mention?
Yeah, I think the bridge loans are the most important thing to consider, because there are going to be a lot more people going after SB 51C. I always 7C, the 7C programs.
Mhm.
And so, the SBA has been expanding those programs. One of the things I think is very interesting is the SBA is, traditionally you could only get those loans through a federally insured depository institution, or a farm credit bank or so forth. The SBA is now talking about expanding the list of acceptable lenders to include non-bank financial institutions.
Yes.
Yeah,
I saw
so
that.
there
Yep.
are opportunities there for non-bank loans that the SBA will guarantee, and
Sure.
then there's the bridge loans that I think will be very important as well.
Awesome.
And again, there's so much here to digest, and I know that I hope that some of the people that are watching today will come back and watch again and catch things that they missed, because
Yeah,
I
for
think it's
sure.
an immense education process, not only for the ISOs and agents, but for the merchants.
Yep, absolutely. So, Patty, last thing I want to cover with you before we jump into the phone sales side of it is, I know that there's services you provide. We don't talk about that very much on the podcast, but there's a lot of ISOs and even small ISO individual agents listening that are going to be looking to put out press releases, send out emails, communicating this information. Can you talk a little bit about what you do for just a minute and how people might be able to reach you if they wanted to get your help with putting some of this stuff together?
Okay, well, first let me just say communication is so bloody important. Communicating with your workers, communicating with your clients, communicating with your bankers. And if I were in the business of selling merchant services, I'd be mapping out a strategy for getting this information out to my clients as fast and accurately as I could. This is, to me, where that whole partnership component of being a merchant services rep is all about.
Yep.
When I first started covering this business, it was all about selling and selling on price, and now it's about being a partner with your merchant. And this is an opportunity where you can really shine in that partnership role. And transactions, we all know that transactions are down. We've talked about that on the podcast. They're down probably 50% or more in some industries.
Mhm.
So it's in everybody's best interest to keep these businesses operating and flourishing. And the best way that you can help them is through targeted communication, not overkill. Just hey, I'm here to help. Phone calls probably aren't going to cut it. I think emails are going to cut it.
Yep.
I've been working with a few clients already that are sending out email blasts to their segmenting them to their various clients, saying, look, this is a difficult time. We just want you to know that we're here to help.
Right.
Here are some resources that we have available for you. And
Sure.
so what I do with people is, I work with them on these. Crafting an email that's going to be read is an art form.
Yeah.
You can't just sit down and go, like this. It has to be very succinct. You have to be punctual. You have to get your points across. You have to be catchy,
Right.
things like that. And so, I would recommend that, you go out and communicate to your merchants. This is a tough time. You need help. We're here to help you with the heavy lifting. And
Sure.
I'd like to suggest that I'm here to help you with the communications heavy lifting. I've been in this business. I've been writing about payments and technology for over 40 years. I
Yep.
know this probably, as I like to say, I know this better than anybody else who knows how to write. And I do know other writers who I work with who are very, very, very good at this. And you could spend a couple of $100 and get a decent, marketing slick or an email. You know, I would just warn you, going out to like a freelancer.com is not going to necessarily help you, because they're not going to be people that understand the business.
Sure.
If somebody's interested, they want to know some of, you know, like I said, I can do simple things. I can do more complex stuff. If you just want to talk and say, just pick my brain for a while, I'm happy to help. I mean, I've been in this industry's been good to me, and I'm trying to pay it back in any
Sure.
way I can.
So how do they
And
reach you, Patty?
I
What's the best way to get a hold of
best
you?
way I would suggest two ways. One, you can send me an email at patty@tacomagroup.com. That's PATTI at TAKOMAGROUP.com. I'm gonna also give you my cell number, but I'll warn you, I don't usually answer calls coming into the cell, because you never know where they're coming from. So text me
Yep.
at 310-749-6051. Again, that's 310-749-6051. Tell me you saw me on this webcast,
Cool.
and
And I just put that
we'll
in the
talk.
chat box as well. So everybody, if you look in your chat section, you'll see
Awesome.
Patty's email and her phone number. So again, Patty is an excellent copywriter. So basically, it's somebody who is very good at the written word and communication, that has decades of experience in the payments industry. So Patty, I think appreciate it. I think that a lot of people hopefully will reach out and get your help with clearly communicating all these programs to their merchants for sure.
And of course, I have to put in a pitch for our Merchant Sales podcast. We talk a lot about these things on there as well. So listen to us every week.
All right, Patty,
Great,
thank you
James.
so much
Thanks.
for the time. Yep, really appreciate it. So always great having Patty on. I always enjoy working with her on the podcast, and just a great copywriter, excellent at researching things. So I want to jump into phone sales, and I've got just a few minutes, about 15 minutes I'm going to take here. And again, I know a lot of you have asked other questions. I apologize. I don't think we'll get to all the questions this evening. I'll do my best to go back through when we're done if you want to stick around a little bit longer and try to answer some more. But I want to talk about phone sales, because I really think that this image that you're basically seeing here, of this guy standing in his house on the phone. I grabbed this image because I think if you really want to be successful, this is probably going to be what you're going to look like for the next 8 weeks. It's time for the phone to become your friend. And so what I'm going to do today, my goal, we're already on information overload. So my goal is not right now to teach you how to be successful in phone sales. I'll save you some time. What I want to do in the next 10 to 15 minutes, if you'll give me that much time, is I just want to get your brain working in a little bit of a different direction, thinking a little more creatively. And then on Monday, I'm going to provide you with a bunch of extra resources for attending the event. Once you've got a little bit of time over the weekend to digest all of this information and start to make your financial plan. Hopefully the things that we talked about already are extremely valuable. So give me a few minutes. Let me just run through this with you quickly. And then again, I'll give you in just a few minutes here, I'll give you the information that you need to find out more about phone sales success. I actually just got done writing, I don't know, it's not done editing. I'd say it's probably a 55-page ebook, 60-page ebook on how to take somebody that's selling face-to-face and help them to sell over the phone, and the framework that's involved with that. So let me jump into this and just give you a few key tips about selling over the phone. So 3 keys to success. So again, I know everybody's on information overload. We're almost going on 2 hours. I get it. Take just a second. Everybody refocus for just a second and give me 10 minutes. I promise you I will make it worth your while, okay? 3 keys to success on the phone: preparation, selling stages, and everything matters. So my first phone sales job, I'll never forget it. I walked into this phone room. I'm like 19 or 20 years old, and I had this old junky white phone. It was like a home phone, no cubicles in this room. There's about 30 reps in this room, and I had a big stack of white papers that had phone numbers on it that I was going to call. And at that time, I was selling lawn care services to consumers. And, I was just terrified of like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I got to sit down and make this phone call. And I'd been in retail sales, but this whole cold calling was a new thing. So I was terrified, but I was more nervous about, looking like a coward in front of all these other people because there was no cubicles. So everybody could see what I was doing, and I'm the new guy, and I sat down. So, out of that fear, that's what motivated me to pick up the phone and make that first dial. Ever since then, I've had a rule that when I make calls, I never think about picking the phone up, because if you think about it, you're not going to do it, right? It's just, I have a certain number of calls to make, dial. You can't stop and think about it. But, it really started kind of a love affair with phone sales, because phone sales is amazing. It's actually super efficient if you do it right, because you're just calling everybody. And everything matters. And so you really want to prepare. You want to know what you're talking about. You want to have a prepared, script. You want to prepare your rebuttals to objections. You want to prepare all of this. You want to sell in stages, which I'll talk about in a second. Usually it's going to be at least a 2-call close, especially in an area like merchant services or point of sale. But the thing that I really love about phone sales the most is the way that everything matters. And it really does. In phone sales, the words you say matter. How fast you talk matters. Your voice inflection matters. Your volume matters. Everything matters. And I love that challenge. And I very quickly fell in love with it. I ended up about 2 years later, I was like 22 and had a call center of 25 people that I managed for that same company. And went on, when I got into merchant services, had a lot of success on the phone, both personally calling and also really leveraging my understanding of phone sales to have people call and schedule appointments for me, do my schedule, cold call, follow up on referrals, a lot of things like that we were able to do. And so I really love phone sales. It's just an exciting thing. But there's a couple of myths that I find in this industry. So, those of you that know about me, know that for the last 5 years, I sold my personal ISO. I sold about 5 years ago. So since then, I've been a consultant and a sales trainer, and I've worked with many, many ISOs. I've worked with several of the top ISOs in the industry in terms of phone sales, companies that do everything over the phone from, beginning to end. And through that experience, I found 2 extremes, 2 myths that have really held people back. And many of you are going to be able to relate to these 2 myths. The first one is that phone sales is a numbers game that must be carried out with brute force and little skill. Okay, how many of you can identify with this, right? Oh, I don't want to get on the phone. Phone sales, that's that thing that people in the Philippines can do. You just call. It's just a numbers game. It's just tons of rejection, and you're just trying to get a couple people interested, and there's this myth, and it's totally untrue, absolutely untrue. Now, you certainly can do it that way. I don't recommend it, but you can do it that way. That's just not the case. If you know how to sell people, you know how to sell people. I don't care if you're in person or over the phone. Many of you are like, well, I'm a face-to-face salesperson. I can't sell people over the phone. Why? Just because you never did it before. That's the only reason. You convinced yourself, oh, the phone, I can't do that. Why? Seriously? Like, it's actually in many ways a lot less, disturbing on the phone, because when you're in person and somebody rejects you, it is like legitimate rejection. They're right in your face. On the phone, the worst thing you can do is hang up. And once you get used to the sound of the hang up, it just doesn't bother you anymore. You just move on, So, don't think of it as this brute force, there's no skill. It's not going to make any difference how good you are. It makes a humongous difference how skilled you are at sales when it comes to selling over the phone. The other extreme is that a phone sales expert can just make miracles happen. It's just amazing. It's just like, boom, they can just sell people. And that's not true either. Kind of these boiler room type concepts. That's not generally the case either. There's just a lot of work that goes into it. And so, scripts are crucial. Talent is required, but understanding and experimentation, those are really the keys. You need to understand why you have the script you have, understand the rationale behind it. I'll talk about that in a second. And then you need to experiment. You got to try different scripts, try saying different things. And the great thing about phone sales is because you can get through so many phone calls so quickly, you can really experiment quickly and see what works and what doesn't work. So let me give you 4 steps, and then we'll be done, and I'll give you some information on how to get, again, all the data you want on this concept, on Monday. So step number 1, assumptions and value proposition. What are you selling? Who are you selling it to? And why do you think they're going to buy it? Because your assumptions might be wrong. And you need to understand what your assumptions are going into it of why you think they're going to buy from you, because you need to very quickly prove if that assumption is correct or incorrect. And you need to, again, really narrow down. So when you're selling over the phone, the other thing that's great about it is when you're going door to door, it makes it a little more difficult to target, one vertical because you got to drive so far to get to the next one. Over the phone, you can afford to be laser focused. You can literally target only hair salons in a particular city because you can just call all of them in over the course of a couple of days. So, it's really efficient to target. And so you really want to target very carefully. Step number 2, you need to understand the 2-phase sales process. When you're calling over the phone, there are 2 phases. 1 is qualification and 2 is acceptance. And these are usually at least 2 different phone calls. Many times they can be more than that. But when you're designing a script process, it's 2 separate phone calls. The first call is qualification, where we don't want the merchant to feel that they have a choice to be made. We want them to feel that we're trying to see if we want to choose them, okay? So we really want to flip the tables on the phone call. And we want to make merchants feel that, look, there's a program we have. And again, it could be anything. It could be your point of sale system. It could be cash discounting or surcharging. It could be traditional processing with a lower cost. It could be a new terminal, whatever it is. Your value proposition is going to be unique depending on the vertical. But you want to call them with this idea that I believe that you, Mr. Merchant, you might qualify for my program. If you do, it's a no-brainer. You're definitely going to want to do it. But the purpose of this call is to see if you qualify for my program. Then, after that call, we then call back with the acceptance. Congratulations, Mr. Merchant. You're a winner, right? You qualified. And it's not quite that corny, but you get the idea. We want to call back and give them the feeling that, wow, you know what? Your business did qualify for this program, so we definitely want to move ahead. And again, in the ebook that I'll give you on Monday, I describe all of that in much more detail of how to actually structure that. Step number 3, prospect action steps. So once we have the 2-phase process, we break up these 2 phone calls. Now we need to ask ourselves, how do we want the merchant to feel? And what action do we want them to take as we move through the sales process? Because a good script can be broken up almost word by word, definitely sentence by sentence, to say, the reason I said this is because I want the merchant to feel this way, and I want them to take this action or to confirm this emotion. And so when you get to that granular level with your pitch, which is not as hard as you might think, it just takes some time to put it all together, like a few hours. What happens is when things start to not work for you, which is going to happen. The thing about phone sales that I love, it really never works very well when you first start, but you can improve so fast. And so what will happen is if you really understand your pitch and you've got these action steps, you're like, well, I'm not getting the prospect to take this action step. So clearly the thing I'm saying that I'm trying to get them to feel a certain way and take this action, that's what's not working. So let me just change that little part of the script. And so that's a prospect action step. And you're going to usually have 7 or 8 prospect action steps per phone call as you work through it. Once we have those in place, now we're ready to write our script, because now we have everything that we need. We've got our our 2 stages. So we know our 2 phone calls. Within those stages, we know the prospect action steps. Now we just have to write the script that's going to get the merchant to feel this way and take this action. So that's it. That's the 4 steps to successful phone sales. Again, that was the 10-minute version of something that's probably a 6-hour topic. So I want to tell you what I've put together, because I really want to do something to help you out. I know a lot of you right now are looking for, what do you do next? How are you going to move forward? And so here's what I've done for you. So I have set up a series of 1-hour live training sessions. So again, I have an ebook I put together, which I'm going to send out Monday to everybody that qualifies for it, which I'll explain in 1 second. And I'm going to break it down for you over a series of live training events where we can do a lot of Q&A, a lot of back and forth. I can answer specific questions. And then, of course, I'm going to be recording those live events. And then those will be put into our training course section. So if you miss one, you can watch the video for it. So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to do these I'm going to do them these days you see here, starting coming up on Wednesday. So my thought is probably, I'll send you the ebook on Monday, give you a couple days to digest that, along with, you got to go to your bank and you got to apply for all this great financing options and all that. Then Wednesday, starting on Wednesday at 11 a.m. All of these are at 11 a.m. Eastern. I figure that gives enough time for people that are on the West Coast to jump in with us. So from 11 to noon, that 1-hour slot, I'm going to talk to you about the value proposition. So we're going to spend a whole hour, and I'm literally going to give you examples for probably about a half hour, 40 minutes of, you could sell this to this person. Here's how that would work. you could sell this to these people right now, like literally coronavirus specific. This is what I would sell and who I would sell it to right now, okay, over the phone. Then we skip a day, we go to Friday. Friday, we say, okay, let's break down our 2 phases and the prospect action steps that go in there. And I'm going to break those down and give you very specific examples. Then we'll do Q&A and I'll help you with, hey, James, I picked this one. What are my action steps? What should I try to do? And so we'll walk through that. So then you'll have a little time to digest. You could go ahead and write your script over the weekend, next weekend. Then on that Monday at 11 a.m., then I'm going to write the script. So then I'm going to actually show you examples of how do we convert these action steps into phone scripts. Hopefully you've already got one that you've worked out, and then this will help you to edit that and make adjustments to it. Then we're going to follow that up with that Friday and the next Friday doing just role play and Q&A sessions. And so it's going to be just an interactive event. I'm going to ask a lot of questions. How's it going for you? You've made calls for 4 days. What's happening? And we're just going to overcome roadblocks, overcome these issues, and figure out, what really needs to be done. So a couple ways that you can enroll in this. I'll be totally honest with you and really transparent. I'm a capitalist. I like to make money. I think all of you know me well enough to know that I like to help people just about as much as I like to make money. I like to make money a little bit more, but I really do like to help people. And so this is a program I've had in the works for a while. I was planning to roll this out for 6 months probably. I was going to charge about $1,000 for it. With everything that's happened and the state of the market, I'm not going to charge anything. So all you have to do is you do have to be in our all access pass, which you can get for free if you don't already have it. So let me explain real quick how to get it. So there's basically 2 ways you can get it. It's included with the all access pass. I think most of you on here already have this. If you do not have it, I will give it to you free for 14 days. I'll give you a link in a second. It basically gives you access to all of my training content. I've got, I don't even know, 30 video courses. I just put a new one up on cash discounting and a few other things. We've got cash discounting on there. We have how to schedule an appointment. We have how to read a processing statement. Brand new course just came out on really advanced statement analysis, tons of stuff like that. So it's included with the all access pass. If you've already got that, you're golden. You're going to get an email on Tuesday morning with all the information you need, and you're good. And we'll send you the ebook on Monday. It's also included with the ISO training. So if you're one of our ISOs that already pays us for training, it's just going to be included with that. Your agents can participate in the program. I'm going to send you instructions. My team's going to reach out and send you instructions on how to get your agents to be part of these live sessions. And if you don't want to do that, the videos are going to be put into your branded training system. So either way, it's going to be included. We'll send out an email on Tuesday morning with the links for all the webinars that you can register for. And again, Monday, we'll send out the ebook. So the idea is on Monday, my team's going to say, okay, everybody that's got the all access pass, send them an email with a link to the free ebook. Okay, so if you don't have the all access pass, you're going to want to get it. And here is the link for that. So if you're an individual person, go to ccsalespro.com/training. ccsalespro.com/training. You could also go to courses.ccsalespro.com if you want to get a little more information, but it's called the All Access Pass. It is free for 14 days, and then it's $59 a month. If you get to the end of 14 days and you're like, wow, James, I still, we're struggling, it's tight, literally just email support@ccsalespro.com and say, hey, I need a little more time, and we'll give you another 2 weeks. Just ask. If you don't ask, we're going to charge you because we do try to make money from our services. But if you don't want to pay it, you need a little extra time to pay it, just email support@ccsalespro.com before the 14-day trial is up, and we'll extend it for you, no problem. I'm not trying to make money off this thing. If I was, I would charge $1,000 for it, and I would sell a bunch of them. So this is a program where literally I've given it to you free. The 14 days, you could jump in free for 14 days and cancel it, and you're going to get all of the content basically. So I just want to help you guys out. So again, if you don't have the all access pass, go to ccsalespro.com/training. And you can get that. If you're an ISO and you don't already have our ISO training package, which is also a subscription where we provide training, customized training for ISOs to help out their agents, white labeled, customized stuff. But then every month we add things to it, like this program where your agents can participate if they're part of the program. Obviously, we never talk about compensation. We don't talk about any of that kind of stuff in the ISO version of anything. So, we work with all the ISOs out there, so we get it. So again, I think many of you already have access to all this. I hope. If you don't, go get access to it. ccsalespro.com/training if you're an individual, ccsalespro.com/ISO if you are an ISO, and you can get information there about that. Okay, let me answer some questions. It is 5:05. If you need to jump off, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. But I'm going to answer some questions for you right now. Yeah, so as far as getting a script right now, Nicholas, yes, on Monday, I will give it to you. So here's what happened, guys. I'm literally looking at it right here. This is it. I wrote the whole thing, the whole book, the script, the whole deal. The problem is it didn't get edited yet. And our graphic designer, obviously we had some different work situations going on. So that's going to be done by Monday. And then we'll send it out as soon as it's done. If you really want an advanced copy that badly before Monday, shoot me an email and I can send you a link for it as long as you're part of the All Access Pass. So that's fine. I'll send you. It just won't be a formatted version. So, Anthony, no, I can't do it at 2 p.m. Eastern. I've got to do them at 11 a.m. But again, they're going to be recorded. The videos will be posted that same day at courses.ccsalespro.com. So you, actually by 2 p.m., you'll probably have access. So you can probably do it at 2 p.m. each of those days. It's just we're going to do it live at 11, and then we'll put the video up at as soon as we can within several hours. That'll be up. Hey, my pleasure. Glad to do this. Can you please write a cash discount script over the phone? Yes, I already have one. It's in the ebook that you'll get on Monday, as long as you're in the All Access Pass. Let's see here. Yeah, AJ says speed, tone, and tempo. Absolutely. Where can we see the recording? Yeah, Mike, this is going to be on YouTube. YouTube.com/ccsalespro. It'll be a little while, obviously, a couple days, because we're gonna have to produce it and all that. James, how did you figure the 20,000 for somebody that's 96,000 a year? 96,000 divided by 12 is 8,000 a month. With the Paycheck Protection Program, you get the monthly amount times 2.5. So 8,000 times 2.5 is $20,000. When you're done with the phone sales, you mentioned the loan for sole props again, the example. Yeah, okay, so we just did that. Shannon asked, do we have to get showered and dressed like the guy in the picture if we're going to call from home? Yes, it's a requirement, Shannon. Help you feel excited, right? Can you touch a little bit of ISO with 1099 sales employees? So yeah, so I think Mike, we're talking about the phone sales side. So yes, what you need to do if you're an ISO is you need to get your agents all doing this. Like, it's a no-brainer. I mean, really, seriously, like, your agents are sitting home right now wondering what they're going to do. How long is this going to last? And I'll be honest with you, if you're waiting for everything to open up so they can go sell in the field again, that could be potentially a very bad strategy, because it could literally be months. Like, it's not like, I mean, I think everybody realizes here, it's not like in 8 weeks from now the coronavirus is gone. They're talking about having a cure for the coronavirus, an actual vaccine, in like a year and a half. So I don't think everybody's going to be super excited about face-to-face interaction in 8 weeks, So what that means is that we have to transition, and it could be a long transition. And I really believe the ISOs and sales teams that make this transition first are going to have a massive advantage, because there really are successful things. You have salespeople that know how to sell, that are good at sales. If you could give them the confidence to try selling over the phone, they can do it. They really can. And there's a lot of businesses right now that you can call that are available. It's not like the whole business world is shut down, just a lot of the physical location, but there's a lot of other things you can do. You can call for B2B. There's a lot of stuff you can do. So anyway, good question. Hey, David, do me a favor and shoot me an email, james@ccsalespro.com, asking me to call you. I'm probably not going to remember that at this spot. So, okay, you know what? A lot more questions, like hundreds. I think we're going to have to cut it short right there, but it's been such a pleasure. If there is a question that I did not answer, if you're an individual agent, go to Facebook, look up CC Sales Pro Community, and join the Facebook group and ask me the question there. If you're an ISO, shoot me an email, james@ccsalespro.com, and I will do my best to answer that question. So, all right, everybody. Hey, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Wish you all health, safety, and of course, success. Have a wonderful day.